Hear me all right? Okay.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, cool. So here we are today to discuss about the problem statements workshop. So we all know that how important a problem statement is. We're going to try and define how we narrow down on a problem statement, what are the essential components of a problem statement, and what are the do's and don'ts, and probably go over like a sample deck of sorts. So that's kind of like the high level overview of what we're going to go over the next 20-30 minutes. Yeah, I think I just covered this part. So our goal, let's try and understand the problem more deeply, and because that's going to be an essential part of the compelling pitch deck that you are going to be building in a couple days. Three key components are essentially the problem, the population, and the outcome. The problem and the outcome are very important. Population, more or less so, because you're going to start out with one population, but then you're going to go and expand to different population segments. But the problem and the outcome are super critical. Once you start having defined your problem, your population, and outcome, you can string it together that looks something like this. A way to address XYZ problem in XYZ population that causes or that results in some outcome. So a way to address problem in population that gives you an outcome. So this is kind of like taken from the Stanford biodesign methodology. So they really drill you down on trying to get the problem really right, and then of course followed by the population and then the outcome. So we'll try and look at a couple of do's and don'ts when you're trying to make some of these need statements, and go over some of these examples to make this more clear. And yeah, please feel free to stop me at any point if I'm going too fast or if something is not clear. I'll be happy to explain. But also a lot of questions, at least when I was trying to do this, I had a lot of questions about how you define these outcomes. Like, is it just about cost? Like, okay, I'm going to make something that reduces cost of something, or I'm just going to improve like clinical efficacy. Like, those are the only two things that I could really think of straight up. But turns out there are many ways you can measure outcomes. And again, I picked this up from the textbook straight up, but you can measure the outcomes. Let's see, my bad, sorry. I think I can't get the pointer, but I think you can see my cursor. You could check patient convenience. That's one outcome. You can also think about physicians' ease of use, physicians' productivity. These are very different ways of thinking about outcomes. And I really did not think about this when I first read, okay, I need to figure out an outcome. The only two things that come to my head are cost and straight up, is it improving time or is it improving efficacy? Basically, the cost is like the third bullet point that they have here, and the clinical outcome is what I was talking about. But turns out you can actually measure it in multiple ways. We'll share these slides if you guys want. So, and these are all there in the Stanford biodesign textbook. That's kind of like, I even mentioned that out here. So it's easy to pick up and read. It's even available online. So won't go deep dive on all of these individually, but just to note. So a bunch of pitfalls when developing a problem statement, right? Sometimes people come up with something that is very general, like a need can be extremely general. Like, you can't come up and say, okay, I'm going to design an improved outcome for a spine surgery. That would not really make for any particular device that you would be building upfront after developing your need statement. For example, you could think about a way to reduce risk of reherniation after lumbar disectomy for sciatica to reduce reoperation. Well, I don't understand everything there, but you understand how they're getting a little bit more specific, that we want to target a particular procedure and a diagnosis or a complication. Sometimes a need can be too specific, like you overshoot and you say, oh, we'll just treat bifurcation lesions in just the left main coronary artery to reduce recurrence rates. You don't necessarily need to like narrow down so much. You could just treat any coronary artery because they'd almost always have the same kind of effects or same kind of disease, and you could use the same device to treat all these coronary arteries. So thinking about it, you want to actually maximize your patient population or the number of people that your device can apply to, while trying to be specific. It's a very delicate balance that you have to play. And I think that'll become a little bit more clear when I present an example, overall example. So sometimes the need is stuck in current practice. Sometimes needs have embedded solutions. So we do not want to embed our solution into a need. Then that's going to stifle the whole brainstorming and ideation process. You're just going to, if you come up with something like a way to ultrasonically weld suture in surgery, you're just going to think about ultrasonically welding and nothing else. But if you kind of like generalize out and say that, okay, this is a problem that I want to solve with this outcome, then you can actually think of ultrasound. You could even think of RF. You could think of multiple different methodologies and see which one fits the best. So do not try and embed a solution to your need statement. With that, I'll just go over a quick example, something that I've done in the past, so you understand how we come up with our need statement. So this is, so I was previously at Stanford, so I was attending the Stanford Biodesign classes. Our team came up with this idea called an EIT-based sensor for DVT. I'll give you an overview of how we went about thinking about this problem. Just before I go ahead, any questions so far? Okay, I guess we're doing fine. Just a second.
I'll let you know if there's any questions in the chat.
Okay, yeah. So we went ahead and wanted to solve a problem called DVT. I'm not going to be pitching here, but I'm going to be explaining how we design our pitch. So it's a little different. So what is DVT? We tried solving this problem of deep vein thrombosis, which is a clot that forms in the lower extremities usually. And sometimes these clots are called thrombuses. And since they're right in the middle of your leg, they're deep veins, so deep vein thrombosis. That's the origin of the name. These clots can actually dislodge from your leg and go all the way to your heart, causing a pulmonary embolism, or in short, a PE. That means they're going to block your heart, and then you might just die. Or they could also go all the way to your brain and you cause a stroke. So they're pretty dangerous at that. We targeted DVT because we saw that there were approximately 900,000 cases a year, and that was costing us almost $10 billion total cost of the system. So pretty pressing need. The current stages of care that we saw for anyone who's diagnosed with a DVT. So DVT's incidence is mostly higher in patients who do not move their legs often, and patients often post-surgery have a lot of bed rest time. So since they're not moving their legs, they might end up getting a DVT. When a nurse kind of notices the pre-symptoms of a DVT coming up, they're going to do a blood test, and the blood test is going to take for a while. They're going to do a D-dimer test and see if your blood is coagulable at that stage. So we wanted to try and intervene before a DVT occurs. And if you're able to prevent a DVT, you prevent a lot of downstream costs for hospitals. What we went ahead and did was we did a population mapping of trying to see which patients actually have DVTs. We did our own research, and we did this whole population chart thing where we found acute rehab patients have DVTs, post-arthroplasty patients, elderly patients, heparin-induced thrombocytopenia patients, et cetera, et cetera. We figured out the population numbers of that disease, and we also figured out how many DVT cases there are in each of these populations segments. So so this is basically the place where you have to choose a single population. I'm sure everyone would love to treat everyone. That's great, but then you have to start somewhere. You have to show that your device that you eventually build is efficacious to a certain segment of patients. So we started out by going to acute rehab patients because they have the highest incidence rate. If you kind of like do DVT cases divided by the population, we see that this is almost at 10%, which is the highest. amongst all other populations. So we wanted to start with acute rehab patients. So all that boils us down to our need statement, which looked something like a way to rapidly and accurately screen for lower extremity DVT in acute rehab patients within 90 days post-injury in order to increase DVT diagnosis, thus reducing P incidence. So just to go back up a little bit, the green is basically the problem that we're trying to solve. We want to like screen for lower extremity DVTs rapidly. And our population is acute rehab patients. Again, trying to be a little bit specific because within 90 days post-injury, the incidence of developing a DVT is much higher because they're usually in bed rest during those days. And we want to try and talk about our outcomes. It's increasing DVT diagnosis, thus reducing P incidence. I hope that was kind of clear. And so basically how we change the cycle of care, this is something that we don't expect people to do right now, but just to complete what I was talking about. A patient is experiencing a DVT, they're going to wear our device, and the device is going to tell them when a DVT is forming. And then, so there's like a screening procedure. And after that, the patient will go and get a more deep dive ultrasound exam of sorts, and the doctor can give them medication. They could have heparin, or if they can't have heparin, at least they know that DVT is forming and can be treated right at the start before it forms a P and much more complicated disease states. Okay, that's probably it from my side. Any questions I'd be happy to answer. I can go back. Zena, what are we doing now?
Yeah, let's open it up for questions if anyone has any.
I have a comment, and that is that first, this was excellent. Thank you. Inexperienced presenters often spend too much time discussing the problem and not enough time discussing their solution, why it's differentiated, why they have some protection against competition, what they've achieved to date, and what their milestones are going to be in the future, the other elements of a pitch deck. So your explanation here was excellent, but it all boils down to being able to articulate, usually in one or at most two slides, what the problem is. And I just want to stress that you've done a very good job of giving a format here, and that would be enough, right? So in your example of deep venous thrombosis, you could say, deep venous thrombosis or blood clots in the lower legs are a costly problem, particularly in acute rehabilitation patients, where outcomes tend to be poor and the annualized US healthcare costs are $10 billion.
Mm-hmm.
That's a succinct description of the problem, right?
Yes.
And you've narrowed the problem to the population that you're interested in serving, and you get your audience immediately thinking, well, wouldn't it be great if, and just as they're thinking that, you deliver your solution.
Yes, yeah, the solution kind of follows this. That's right.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, I do have a question. So sorry, I joined in the middle, so I didn't hear the solution for the specific screen tool for the DVT. So
no, yeah, I didn't intentionally mention the solution. So I was only trying to develop the problem statement in this segment.
Oh,
so that was very intentional. There is a solution that kind of follows this, but just limit it up to the problem statement.
Okay, got it. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else have questions?
I have a question. So there was this interesting slide about like problem or the solution being embedded in the statement. Can we go back to that slide?
Yeah, sure.
Do we get to see you?
Yeah, sure. Just a second.
That's true for everybody on the line. You know, it's good to be seen. That's
Can
a,
you see
you know,
me
relationships, networking, that's all a part of this, right?
now? You can see me now, right?
We can.
Now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I just like lost my attention at this point. Can you repeat what are the 2 points here?
Okay. I think your camera is flipped though.
Okay. Oh shit.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I was actually like talking more about the need having an embedded solution. So for example, if you look at this, it talks about a way to ultrasonically weld suture in surgery. So you're kind of like narrowing down your problem to just use ultrasound. So essentially you're describing if you have a solution, you're kind of like backtracking and developing a problem after that. The whole biodesign ethos is that you kind of first find the problem, talk to patients, talk to doctors, talk to all the stakeholders, develop a problem, and then think about the multiple tools that you have and try and find a solution for that. If you kind of narrow yourself down to a solution, just maybe if you can just think about, oh yeah, let's do ML in radiology, and since you're like just focusing on machine learning, you don't really think about other ways of how to solve that particular problem. So that's one thing when developing a problem statement you want to avoid. And another thing is a need is stuck in current practice. For example, you don't want to like talk about a particular practice that is being done. So for example, this is kind of like very solid towards reimbursement codes. So there are particular reimbursement codes for every procedure right there in the US. And if you don't want to just narrow yourself down to a particular reimbursement code at the start, you want to cast a wide net. And then eventually when you're developing a solution, you want to try and build your device such that it falls under a particular reimbursement code such that your product can get insured and insurance agencies can pay for your product. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we can move on to our group exercise. Ashish, do you want me to take over and screen share, or do you want to continue?
No, you go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you for that informative presentation, Ashish.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
That was great.
All right, so we want one of you in the audience to volunteer to share your idea, and we all will, as a group, construct a need statement for you. So this is a great opportunity to get the help of our mentors who are on this call, as well as Ashish, who just presented, and he also has experience with the Stanford Biodesign program, as he mentioned. So any volunteers who want to share?
I can go ahead if no
Okay.
one else wants to go. So I actually met up with Akila, another member who was part of the previous meeting. We discussed our ideas of innovating in dentistry, and we both explored the idea of having our phones scan dental impressions for companies like Invisalign that are taken by the patient in their homes for direct communication to the dentist and then to a dental 3D printer or the dental technician. Versus going to multiple in-person appointments. And then this could also be followed by better precision because Akila was telling me when she went for Invisalign, they were saying that she that the retainer wasn't fitting right because her teeth were shifting. So she had the inconvenience of having to go to the dentist a couple times to get the impression done again. So our idea is to just have a phone scan the dental impression at home versus having to go to the dentist. So it would be a convenience factor for time for the patient. We haven't really explored the cost and the need of this. So this is it's kind of a seed that we've planted that we don't know if it can grow.
Dr. Riker, Dr. Norbash. You wanna
So Sarah, I have a
facilitate?
question. I'd like a little bit more information if I may. Is it all right if I ask some questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. So are you interested in scanning the Invisalign? That's not the case. You want to scan the teeth, correct?
The mold. So I don't think Invisalign does this. I don't think they do this, but I know a lot of these other companies like Invisalign that are trying to do these at-home retainers are having the patients get the mold at home, and then they send the mold in a box and they ship it off to the dental lab or the dentist. So instead of having to ship it or go to get your mouth scanned at the dental office, you can just do it at home by having the dental. It's like a I'm trying to think of the word. It's like a plate with the mold that you put in your mouth, and then you let it dry, and then you take it out, and you're supposed to ship it off to the dentist. But instead of doing that, you can just scan the mold with your phone. But I'm not too familiar with the AI technology of this. But Akila was saying that this AI technology is already out there. So I'm not too familiar with that part. She was unfortunately unable to make it to this meeting.
So what I was visualizing as you were speaking, when I was a young man, I played football. And what we would do is we would buy these football retainers from drugstores, and you boil them in water and then you bite on them. And when you bite on them, it would configure to your teeth, and there would be an impression of your teeth in it. So I'm wondering whether the process is you buy something from a place where it's readily available, you make that little bite impression, you then scan the bite impression for the upper and the lower teeth. As long as it's three-dimensional, has the right information, then you ship that information, and that lets them know what's happening with critical parts of your teeth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Marie.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think what that has been the tradition and the way that braces and products like Invisalign have worked. But I think in the last decade, they have innovated and figured out how to do this photographically. So if you go today to get Invisalign in the dental office, they're not going to stick goop down your throat, make you gag anymore, like you guys might remember doing when you were kids, or I remember doing when I got braces as an adult. They just take pictures, and it's crazy. They have a computer program that stitches together the pictures, and they end up with a 3D model of your of your teeth without doing an impression. So your question is, could you come up with a way to do that? What I heard your question to be was, could you come up with a way of allowing a consumer to obtain a model of their mouth without having to ship them an appliance ahead of time or force them to go into into a dental office, because so more and more of these companies want to do total mail order.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So your problem is, that today, in order to obtain these, what's the general term for Invisalign? What do dentists call that general field?
That's as far as categories like cosmetic dentistry.
No, but I mean, Invisalign is a trade name. Now there's multiple companies doing Invisalign. Is there something other than a trade name for it, like progressive dental retainers, or
Oh, I'm actually not too sure. I've just heard Invisalign throughout dental offices. I don't hear like the actual terminology.
Aligner. I just looked it up. They're called aligners.
aligners? Okay. So the problem is in order to obtain dental aligners, a patient today is required to go to a dental office, which is inconvenient and costly given that the aligners come in the mail.
Yes. And it also takes up the dentist's time. A lot of times their schedules will be filled with Invisalign checkups, and it's like a 10-15 minute appointment, and the patient could be driving from somewhere far, and it's just, and they have to come in every couple of weeks. So having that convenience factor would save time for the dentist and the consumer, the drive, and allowing the dentist to maybe see other patients with other problems aside from aligners.
Yeah, of course they make a living doing this, but you dove into another area, I think just now, which is not just the initial impression, but you go in to get a checkup because they're validating that that you're making progress.
So Marie, you may remember Ashish said that he got his Invisaligns for 1/5 the price in India. And then there's a problem with them not quite fitting right at some point in time. And he doesn't want to have to fly all the way back to India to solve the problem. They should be able to do this remotely. And so I don't know if that's a similar problem statement or a related problem statement.
That's actually why Akila thought of this idea, was because of that inconvenience. I think her teeth were growing or it didn't fit right, and she would have to go all the way over there.
Yeah, some people, I think like 1 in 5 people fail aligners, end up with braces. And sometimes halfway through, I know this happened to me, sometimes partially through your treatment, because of the way your teeth are moving, they say, they throw away, they make 20 sets of aligners and they throw away number 11 through 20 and they say, we're going to get you a new set because, you're making more progress or less progress, or, something is happening. So it sounds like your problem is that the initial assessment and tracking of therapy in patients who are receiving aligners for dental alignment requires on-site supervision.
Yes, yeah.
Something like that?
Yes, like that. Yeah, there's a few problems that, as I thought about this more, I started to think of other problems along the side, like the precision factor and the time, and then the cost. Is this going to be more cost efficient for patients and dentists? And also, not everyone is a candidate for Invisalign. So yeah, the focus population I would think is just Invisalign patients, because I know there's a lot of companies that are trying to follow what Invisalign does. They just have patients take the impression. They don't even go to the dentist. They just take the impression, the mold, and they send it off to this company, and then they know if they're a candidate or not, and then they just continuously send them the aligners, and a lot of times they don't fit. So instead of having to send it back and forth, they could just scan the mold then and there, and they could be informed of what the problem is.
Scan the mold, or do you mean scan the teeth?
The mold. So I thought about the teeth, but I'm not too familiar with what kind of AI would be precise enough to scan the entire mouth with a phone or a certain lens. So I was leaning more towards the actual mold.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm going to share a whiteboard, Sarah, so that we can write the problem, the population, and the outcome, and then create your whole problem statement. So let's try to do that.
Thank you, Zena.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, I think
Okay.
your example is incredibly straightforward. I really appreciate our leading off with yours. So the problem is in-person dental alignment visits. The population is dental alignment customers. And the outcome is eradicates the need for in-person visits.
Okay, cool. And then the framework was a way to, and then problem in population in order to, and then that's the outcome, right? So a way to make or fix in-person dental alignment visits for dental alignment customers in order to eradicate the need for in-person visits.
So then what you heard was a little bit of a discussion between Murray and Sarah about what's the best way of doing this. Murray's jumping ahead a little bit saying, you know what, even though my teeth are in my head, maybe there is a way to scan the teeth directly with an iPhone and three-dimensionally copy that. And what Sarah is suggesting is if you make an impression of the teeth, you can take it out of the mouth. Now you no longer have the problem of your cheeks and your lips surrounding this space and being in close quarters. Maybe if you can scan the mold, that might give you enough information to move on, to make them Invisaligns, to track the Invisaligns, to determine when they're completed. So I think that's the crux of a conversation is what can be done with an iPhone with your teeth in your head, and what do you have to do in terms of using a proxy measure of where the teeth are?
So if you use that framework that you have there, which I think is great, Ashish presented the problem statement as a needs statement. So we need a way to remotely assess an individual's dental alignment for patients seeking aligner therapy in order to eliminate the need for in-office visits.
So excuse me, so I do have a question. So what is the current practice that happened in-person dental alignment visit? Just take a few pictures, or that include other procedures, say like X-ray or something? Sorry, I'm not really a dental in the dental business.
So Dr. Sai, I had a full course of Invisaligns, which ended about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And what they would do is I would go in every couple of weeks and they would open my mouth. They would have me put the Invisaligns in, and they would run their finger across the top and the bottom to see if there were any gaps. They would just look, and that was it. They wouldn't do pictures. They wouldn't do a 3D model. They wouldn't do any molds. They were just looking to see if the Invisaligns fit the way that they were supposed to, if I was using them correctly.
So if they don't fit, then what happened?
They don't fit, then Murray happens. You get braces, or they have to do a new set of Invisaligns, an entirely new set. To his point, if they've got 20 trays that you haven't used yet, they have to throw them all away and start over again.
Oh, okay.
I want to ask our dental professional here. It's also, do dentists, do orthodontists still do like Panorex and dental x-rays before they do any type of orthodontia?
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Now, these companies that are doing it, that want to do this totally by remote, are they basically saying that's not necessary? You know, we can treat most people without the dental x-rays. And
yes, but they're neglecting the fact that with x-rays, like the 3D all around x-rays, you're able to diagnose other problems. You won't be able to see the muscles and like the overall like your jaw, you'll be able to diagnose TMJ disorder. There's a lot of other things that could be diagnosed. So with these companies like Invisalign, or not Invisalign, but the other companies that are just doing it remotely, they're not able to detect those issues and resolve them.
Well, so how do you feel about being somebody who, I mean, it from the tone of your voice, and you're already in the dental union, you know, I've by the way, argued with dentists for years, and I've done literature searches on this because, you know, the field of dentistry does routine x-rays on people, often as frequent as every 6 months, to look for benign pathology. And we only have one other example in all of healthcare where that's done. So I, as a radiologist, I've challenged my dentists over the years saying, you know, I'm a man of science. Show me a prospectively controlled trial that dental x-rays as a screening test makes sense, because you're radiating people. And they always give me an anecdote saying, well, just a couple of weeks ago, I incidentally found a patient. If I hadn't have done that, they might have had a root canal. And I point out, you know, that's an anecdote. That's not science. So I don't know. I mean, I'm telling you, I have repetitively done literature searches on this to see if someone, you might ask, of course, you don't want to ask too loudly in dental school. They may throw you out of the dental union, but you're proposing a solution that would eliminate the office visit.
Yes, but Invisalign is encouraged by the dentist. It's not something that patients, well, I'd have to look at the statistics of this, but from what I've observed, a lot of patients are informed of Invisalign through the dentist after an x-ray. So they are essentially getting the whole perspective of what's going on in their muscles and their jaws and everything. So it's not like they're not informed of everything that's going on.
I have a question, if I can ask. Is it that the patient goes to the dental office, says, hey, my teeth need to get, you know, straight. Dentist looks at the teeth, says, okay, it looks like you're a candidate for Invisalign. You know, we can sign you up, or go sign up. They get a mold, they send it to Invisalign, and by they, maybe you can clarify who's the one getting the mold. Is it the dentist or is it the patient at home? They send it to Invisalign. Invisalign will then send them, and by them, again, is it the dental office or is it the patient, the actual Invisalign? And then does the patient keep coming back to the office for the dentist to check it out, or are they just in contact with the Invisalign people?
Well, the patient they don't have the mold. Most dentists, they actually just do a 3D scan for Invisalign, and they send that to Invisalign. I don't know if it's they have a 3D printer or if it's a dental technician. But I'm more, I guess now I'm kind of looking into the other companies that are doing this delivery of the mold, where patients are just taking their own molds. So
yeah, I think I have seen a few advertisements for these companies who are encouraging people at home to just buy the kit, do the mold themselves, and then send it in. And I'm trying to understand, like, you know, trying to understand the problem statement, or, you know, the problem a little bit better. And is it that when the patients are doing this and their Invisalign comes, it doesn't fit? Is that the problem, or is the problem the actual dental visits, that they have to make the dental visits? Because it seems like there's some companies or some infrastructure that's built around the mold. I'm sorry?
I would argue that it's both, because at least kind of what my idea is, I was thinking more of the inconvenience factor. Akila had personally experienced the fact that it wasn't fitting, and that she would have to go back to get another impression or mold.
Right. So I think maybe then the issue is that there's no way to quantifiably track the progression of liners. Does that seem to be the issue, the problem? Because if you can track the progression, then you might be able to identify what is the next liner to to send, and you should be more informed as to sending one that fits better? Or is the issue that by the time the mold is, and maybe it's related, by the time you take the mold and you send it, then it's been a week and a half since they send you the Invisalign and your teeth have shifted and it no longer fits? Or is that the issue?
I
The
think
teeth don't shift
bigger
that much on their
issue
own
is-
in a week and a half, Arshan. That's not the problem. It's the inconvenience.
Mm.
Zena, can I show a picture of the dental scanners? Can I share?
Yeah, while you're doing
Go for
that, I just, to me, this is a little bit like the Viagra issue. You know, when Viagra and drugs like that first came out, they were dispensed in doctors' offices. You had to have a physical exam. They checked your blood pressure. They made it a big thing. And, now you got companies like Roman where they advertise on, on national television, and it's all handled by remote, which people prefer. And it's the same thing here. By the way, if you're an adult, and we're talking about dentists, but this is mostly done by orthodontists, although there's now battles between orthodontists and dentists. I know, because dentists are starting to do Invisalign more and more, which is encroaching on the field of orthodontics.
So Sarah, as I'm thinking about this is the ultrasound, the butterfly ultrasound scanner that costs $2,000. Murray and I remember when the AccuSound scanner was $150,000. And so, if you want to take an intraoral scanner, and the good ones currently are 11 to 19,000. And if you want to make a cheaper intraoral scanner that'll also have a stitch package, that's one line that you could pursue potentially. And there's no reason to expect that you can't really get these prices down.
This is called the, what was the name of this product?
Oh, these are intraoral scanners. This is what they're using to create the stitched pictures.
Right.
The cheap ultrasound that I was talking about is butterfly.
Okay.
That's not for dentistry.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No, my point was, if you can take a $150,000 tool and reduce most of the functionality to something that you can get by with for $2,000, you can certainly take something that costs $19,000 and bring it down to $500.
By the way, Alex, remember a few months ago, we had an ENT doctor who was interested in developing a device so that you could look in patients' ears at home?
Yes, same thing.
Yeah, we bought one last week for $29 from China.
No kidding.
Best unbelievable picture of an eardrum I have ever seen in my life.
I want to see it. I want to see it, Murray.
Why should any medical student buy an otoscope? It plugs right into your iPhone, and it's seriously, I've never seen an eardrum like this.
Yeah, there are actually an abundance of tools for looking at other things, even eyes that you can get for fairly inexpensive on Amazon and eBay, or even Alibaba, that just integrate with the phone with a really crappy app, but it works.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, interesting.
Look at that. $25?
$29 on Amazon.
Yeah, look at the range of price on these things. I didn't even know they had plug-in modules for otoscopes. So I'm telling you, the tooth scanner, it's close.
I've actually talked to there was an ad there for Firefly, and I've actually talked to them, and they have FDA approved versions of these devices. And again, they do a lot of these type of stuff. So maybe that's a good site to look at, to see what they've developed. And they're like around the $500 price range. Most of their tools, maybe up to $1,000.
But anyway, as Ashish said, your need statement should not be narrowed down to your proposed solution. In other words, your need is not, I've just developed a new gizmo and I need to find a way to use it. Okay, that's not a need statement. Your need is that you want to eliminate the need for in-office visits in order to quantify or document dental alignment in people who want corrective orthodontics. Right? It's something like that type of sentence. You'll have to come up with it, but that's your need. And now you're free to go start investigating your solution, right? Now, before you do that, if you're writing a need statement, you should figure out how big a need it is. Like, is this a $10 need or a $10 billion need? How big is the industry? How many people a year have Invisalign treatment or treatments from companies that compete with Invisalign or braces? What would it mean to countries outside of the first world if you could offer this service much less expensively? Right? You know, your market may turn out to be you know, India or Bangladesh or someplace, not even the US. Although, you know, people in the US are always looking to save money too. So yeah, there's the writing of your sentence. This is what I think the problem is, but then there's the research behind it that makes you feel confident that this is a problem worth solving, a problem that you will wake up in the morning and passionately want to solve for the next 5 years and have great satisfaction for having solved it, and the house on the beach in Hawaii that came as a result.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Edgar. I appreciate it.
No, but
think
you gotta really convince yourself that this is a problem and others.
I was thinking of even because I've worked with a couple of cosmetic dentists, of maybe discussing with them this idea, and if there are some issues or problems that they have seen, like patterns that they've seen with patients in themselves, to kind of get a better picture of what the problem is, because I haven't explored the market or the population, like to see if this is a real problem. This is kind of just based off of observations that I've made, and a problem that Akila has gone through as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, what could be helpful is maybe writing 2 or 3 problem statements and really trying to identify like what problem you're solving, because from our discussion, there were a couple of components to what you're trying to solve. And you said like both can be problems or all 3 can be problems. And so really like identifying and writing 3 or 5 different statements can help you identify that and clarify it so that everyone else knows what problem you're actually solving.
Thank you, Zena. Yes.
Ariel and any of the other members who are with us today, would you guys also like to share your problem statements or ideas? We'd love to hear them.
I just had, it's a very rudimentary idea. I haven't put it into a problem statement or anything yet, but this is just an idea or just like a problem I've noticed for a while. So I actually volunteer at the Veteran Affairs Hospital, so like down here in La Jolla, and I work as a patient escort over there. And like one thing I've really noticed is that at like almost all the time there seems to be a dearth of wheelchairs, and it's not because, well, there's 2 main problems here. One is that maybe there's a lack of wheelchairs, and the other is that wheelchairs keep getting lost. Like sometimes they're all the way in the parking lot, or they're just like somewhere stashed away in an elevator. And that really sets down like the entire hospital, because we're trying to get patients from one wing to another wing, and we're just not able to do that because we don't know what, where the wheelchairs are. So but the problem, I actually talked to my lead about this, and she was like, well, we're trying to get more wheelchairs, but the problem is they're just really, really expensive. They're upwards of like $4,000, $5,000, and the government just can't afford that for like this hospital. So I don't know, like I don't know whether a good thing to do would be like attach some sort of like tracker, like some sort of cheap tracking device onto the wheelchairs, which makes them easier to track, or sort of create a more inexpensive wheelchair, because I have seen like many more inexpensive wheelchairs, but she said, Well, you could make those, but they're just not safe enough for the patients because they have a lot of spine problems. So they need to be extremely safe, and that's what bumps up the cost of that. So trying to find like a good middle ground there is what I was thinking about, but I haven't really narrowed it down to anything over there.
Anish, I think your need statement is pretty clear. I think it's a way to locate wheelchairs for wheelchair dependent individuals that improves wheelchair utilization.
I think that's pretty much it, yeah.
So Murray, it should be easy. RFID, right? How would you do it?
Yeah, I think you could do it with RFID. There are companies that set up RFID clouds. They're called private clouds inside of hospitals and in the neighborhood. And, you know, I mean, geez, I'm not even sure. These days, you know, you can buy a phone for, you know, $20 or something, right? And even the really cheap phones have tracking in them.
Murray, there are companies that do RFID tracking of cath lab inventory, like a catheter.
No, I
has
know.
RFID in it, and it's a disposable.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like you need to apply a tracking system to wheelchairs before you start making new wheelchairs. See if you can find the ones that are there. Then maybe have a, I mean, you could go beyond that and figure out, you know, the wheelchair traffic patterns so that
Yes.
you more optimally deploy them, right? You know, that would be interesting. You could find out the patient traffic patterns too, because maybe it would be smarter if they took all of the patients that required wheelchairs and put them on the first floor instead of the 8th floor. Right. So there's a lot of creative things you could do. Once you understand where the people are with wheelchairs and where they're going, there's a lot you could potentially do to reduce the number of miles a day that are required for a wheelchair.
Right, that actually makes it's a lot of sense because you're getting to the core root of the problem rather than just a surface level solution, just a surface level solution at that point.
So here's a company, it's called Guard RFID, and they talk about tracking all of your assets, including wheelchairs, but they haven't really customized it. So one of the opportunities here for you is in terms of artificial intelligence and software. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think this could be a quick win.
Okay, I'll definitely look more into it, into tracking it, and maybe using some AI to like track patient and wheelchair deployment. So make it more efficient that way. Yeah.
Anish, you're a CEO instantly.
And I'm also attaching a blog for you, Anish, for wheelchair tracking in hospitals with BLE location services. There was a blog written on this that you might be interested in.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Do we have anybody else?
I think that was it from the group.
If you guys don't mind, I had another like sort of problem that same thing at the hospital here, and this, instead of wheelchairs, it was with gurneys this time. And so we only have like, I think around 10 to 12 gurneys, and obviously a lot more patients than that. And while to a certain degree, we're able to like manage and get patients around, the problem came with mainly like the downtime with gurneys, where we had to actually bring them back in and like completely clean them down. And this would take upwards like sometimes between 15 to 20 minutes because we had to clean every inch of it. And plus with, with the pandemic going around and everything, we had to ensure that they were completely wiped down. But this obviously, again, created a problem for the entire hospital because gurneys are being delayed a lot. So I'm not sure what could really be done here, because, safety is obviously like the number one priority. So you can't like cut corners here or anything, but maybe like some sort of a self-cleaning gurney or something is what I was thinking, which would still do the same thing of what we do, but just like 10 times faster or something like that.
Anish, two things pop up in my mind. The first is that maybe part of this is just transportation solutions overall that you're interested in. And you can figure out who is inappropriately using a gurney, who can get by with a wheelchair. And the only reason they're getting a gurney is they don't have enough wheelchairs, right? So you're trying to figure out the distribution of assets, making sure that everybody's kind of operating at the top of their license and you are using only what they need. So there's a chance for you to kind of figure out how that works, because transporting someone in a wheelchair, more people can do that. In a gurney, they wait for transporters. So now maybe you're also looking at transporter solutions for a hospital in terms of how are you utilizing the transporters? Is it efficient? Is it effective? There's a lot you can do in that space. And you reminded me, back in the 1970s, I bought a pair of sneakers from Adidas that had a special antimicrobial lining that was guaranteed to minimize things like athlete's foot. I didn't have athlete's foot, but I just bought it because I thought this is kind of interesting. And it was an artificial fabric. So maybe you're interested in bioactive surfaces and figuring out how you can minimize that with having surfaces that are maybe antiviral resistant in some way, trying to figure out what are coatings that might work, because a cleaning thing might be tougher to do. So,
I see. Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an Israeli company called Synovia that is making antiviral, antibacterial fabrics. That's kind of interesting. Their real business is not the fabrics, it's the machines that efficiently manufacture textiles. But because of COVID, and they're a startup and they needed a quick buck, they started actually making fabrics. They really want to sell these big $1 million instruments to, but anyway, and there's also infrared and other, if you could come up with a device that looks like a baggage scanner in the airport that could throw enough infrared light or X-ray or something on top of a gurney to sterilize it. There might be something better than wiping it down.
I can definitely look into that. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe one place to start with that is there's this company, I'm going to pull up the link for it. They were actually on Shark Tank. They came out with a water bottle that can actually take, let's say, toilet water, for example, and make it drinkable. And it has a certain patented light source on it. It's crazy. So you can go to third world countries with your water bottle and drink the water fine. You just got to let it sit in there for 3 minutes while it does its thing, and it kills everything in the water. Let me find it. I'll put in the link for you. That might be a good place to start to see what kind of technology they're using, and it might work for that too.
Oh, Rashawn, there's a famous picture of Bill Gates drinking a glass of water, and he says 5 hours ago this was raw sewage. So
there you go.
Lovely.
Yeah. So that's what happened to him.
It's one of the many things. That and Jeff Epstein. A lot of different things happened to him.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think, Anish, you should think, I think Dr. Norbash gave a great suggestion. You should be thinking about a business that has to deal with logistics of patient transport.
Gotcha.
To me, that's a broader business. And if you could go into a healthcare institution and say, look, you got a bunch of transporters, you have gurneys, you have so many accidents a year, we're going to revolutionize the way you do patient transport, because we're going to intelligently track where people are going and who's taking them there and how they're getting there. That's a business.
Right.
Oh my God. Murray and I would co-found that business with you. We are desperate for that.
100%. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, Michael?
Yeah. All right. I think we've wrapped it up for today.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you both need to contact Dr. Norbash, Dr. Sy, or Dr. Riker, feel free to reach out to me, or if all three of you can just put your emails in the chat so that Sarah and Anish can reach out to you, that would be great.
Yeah, or if you have any more friends or colleagues that want to get rich and be famous.
I put my cell phone in also if you guys want it.
Okay, great. Zena, would you like to close us out?
Yeah, give me a second.
And Dr. Riker, if you can hang back for a couple minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay, so just another reminder that we have office hours on January 15th, which is the Saturday from 10 to 12. Dr. Riker, Dr. Norbash, Ashish, Arshan, and I will also be there to help you out. We have an upcoming pitch deck / business model workshop that Dr. Riker will be leading next week. We also have office hours again next week on Saturday. And this is all to prepare you for the pitch competition on January 28th. And we do have a $2,000 prize for the first place winner. We highly encourage you to apply, even if you haven't really have a team or thought about the idea too much, because we're here to help you create that pitch deck. And we also are looking for people with just ideas that they want to pursue so that you can be a part of HealthLink and we can help you commercialize that into something that patients can actually use. And here's the flyer for our pitch competition. It's also on our website, healthlink.ucsd.edu. And thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate your participation.
Thank you all so much. This was very informative.
Yeah, thank you. I love the session.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Thank you,
I'm
guys.
staying on.
And feel free to go on the website and register for a spot at the competition.
It's a brief application. So even if you just have an idea or maybe even 2 ideas that you want to share, go submit both of them because we're ready to hear all of your ideas.